Tonight we're going to document one of my favorite custom colors out of the 80s. This is charcoal metallic. Or at least, I thought it was. Welcome back, troglodytes, to your daily dose of guitar information, the Trogly's Guitar Show. This is a hue that's shrouded in so much mystery. I'm going to try my best to make sense out of it for you today. This was first introduced for 1985, and it lasted until early 1987. And mainly you'll find it on Les Paul Customs, but anything that was birthed during that time period could theoretically come in this custom hue. So outside of a Les Paul Custom, you could also find it on early produced custom lights with their thinner body and contours. The double cutaway Les Paul, known as the XPL 400, they had a few different pickup configurations, including HSS. You could also find a bunch of Kahlers on them. I've seen photos of at least one studio custom, but that is a very rare finish on one of those. Might you find a studio standard or a regular studio? Maybe. Here's a regular SG special with it, as well as a Flying V XPL. And if they had it without headstock, I'm sure you might be able to find a regular one as well as an Explorer. I've also seen the Paul Deluxe and even one of those crazy pickup SGs. But if this is the first time you're seeing this hue in Gibson land and you're falling in love, I hate to tell you this, but they did not make many. But this is one of those times where custom color doesn't necessarily mean a skyrocketing price tag, but they do sell at a small premium when they're found in good condition. But if you're looking for one, a lot of times people don't get the names right on these things. Charcoal metallic has been my understanding of what the official finish was called, but thanks to the help of a viewer of the show unearthing info deep in an old Gibson catalog, with photographic proof, that's the big one, I'm proud to say I've been wrong. In fact, very, very wrong. Pewter actually appears to be the correct name for this one, as documented right here in a 1987 Gibson Japanese catalog, where it lists the three colors that were available stock with chrome hardware in the Les Paul Custom lineup: ebony, Ferrari red, and pewter. Now, despite lacking a photo of one of these guitars in the catalog, I can't think of any other hue in this time period that would even come close to this pewter name. But just to be sure though, I contacted Randy Leonard, a Gibson employee at the time, to see if he had any concrete firm evidence in his ledgers. I looked up as many of these old pewter guitars on old reverb listings to get their serial numbers to submit to him so he could look it up to find the truth, but unfortunately, he only had one pewter guitar in his entire log, and it was from 1986 on a Victory Artist bass. So if we could locate that thing, then we would know for 100% sure. But based on the evidence I have now been provided, I'm fairly confident pewter is in fact the correct color. Previously, I had thought pewter was the silver Les Paul Customs that came out in the early 80s, similar to the Guitar Center exclusive 1977 anniversary run. You don't find those things too often, and once a Japanese dealer called it Silver Sky to describe that, which I thought was just completely made up PRS shenanigans stuff, but no, Randy was able to confirm for me that was a real color name at the time that he has attached to some Flying V's and Explorers. So that might have been the same for those customs as well. But just because we know what pewter is now, that's not really going to help you find one of these, because it takes time for info like this to spread. You'll see these get listed as all kinds of different names. For example, outside of pewter and charcoal metallic, gunmetal gray comes up quite often because other manufacturers have used that as a real color. And let's face it, that's pretty much what this is. My last tip for you to find one of these is use the keyword metallic green, because just like the original silver bursts, when they yellow over, they kind of become a slightly greenish hue. This started life a dark gray color, but as the clear coat yellows, it actually does become green, and that's why I appreciate these immensely, because it just gives it a whole new appearance as compared to your regular tobacco sunburst, white, black, or any of the other custom colors. This one really stands out in comparison to them all. But if you're a collector looking for clean examples, pewter is a really tough one to find in good shape, because typically the finish gets worn off the neck. So by no means is the one in my personal collection perfect, but it's very good in that aspect because these things get played hard. When I think of charcoal metallic, I think of bands like Queens of the Stone Age, Mastodon, Tool, Russian Circles. And in fact, Mike Sullivan of Russian Circles is probably the most famous person who regularly uses one of these. However, Bill Kelleher of Mastodon, he's well known for using Norlin era customs in all the coolest of hues. And he even had signature guitars from Gibson recreating Goldburst. And then we all know Adam Jones. He had a sudden spike in popularity in 2020 and made Silverburst pricing go insane. So in my opinion, this finish is a little bit under the radar. And in researching all those serial numbers for Randy, I found relatively few of these customs. The helpful viewer that sent me that catalog's really passionate about these, and he's been tracking. He's had 7 from 85, 7 from 86, and 1 from 87. However, I bet there's probably a lot more than that, just people don't know what to call it when sharing them online. Hopefully this video helps us find more of these, because I've always appreciated these things, especially because you gotta really think about this. 1985, what is going on in Gibson land? They're having big troubles. They're selling the company. The Henry J era starts January 1st, 1986. So technically this is a late Norlin era creation, but its main production actually does occur under the new ownership. This example is technically a first year Henry J era guitar, but here's the thing. The first few years of this new era, they don't really change a whole lot. Starting in 1981, we start to phase out the volute, so that's a relatively fresh change, but still pretty old at this point. But you go back to the mahogany next, starting around 82. We get weight relieving, which is the whole 9 holes, introduced for 1983. So yeah, even though this thing is chunky, it still has 9-hole weight relief, believe it or not. Tim Shaw PAFs, you can see them as late as 87, but not every single model will have them. This one being in 86, I'm fairly confident we'll have that. But we've now phased out of our fancy parts, such as the flip-out winding tuners. We don't have that anymore, but we have switched over into Grovers, which is a plus to many people. And not everybody was a fan of the multi-point adjustment bridges. But sadly, our diamond posi locks are gone by now. Still rocking 3-piece tops though. If you get this one in the light just right, you can see a seam line. For a better look at that, check out Mike's over here, his main gigging guitar. So that's pretty much Pewter in a nutshell. A undersung finish that only lasted a few years. But as an interesting tale of how I got this one, I actually owned this thing before. We documented it on the show, but Chicago Music Exchange ended up buying it from me. But then they sold it to a guy who I sold a lot of guitars to. And about 2 years ago, we took a road trip to Mr. Gold's house where I bought his collection of Les Paul Customs. So let's go ahead and get this puppy cleaned up and make sure no swapperoonies have happened. Let's see what else we can learn here. She polished up beautifully. What kind of pickups do we have stock on a 1986? Well, they just say patent number on there. This is a late era Tim Shaw PAF. And we've got the exact same thing in the bridge. If you're familiar with the Tim Shaws that have the date stamps on them, that lasts through about 1985. Then 86, 87, they just stopped doing that for whatever reason. But late 87, that's when the Bill Lawrence, the original pickups start to come into play, as well as like some PU 490s. So once you get into 87, that's when things get a bit dicey. But these are still Tim Shaws. I get a reading of 7.46 in the neck position, 7.64 in the bridge, and they play together nicely at 377. But now the real fun begins. What does Pewter look like from the factory? Like that. It's a much darker gray hue, but the yellowing of the clear coat, as I was telling you earlier, turns it into this olive green. And trust me, this isn't even the most aged example I've seen. This one's very even and uniform with its yellowness. But just like on Silverburst, how there's absolutely disgusting tar-coated ones. And then there's ones that have just ever so lightly aged. If you want it even more green than this, they do exist. But we're still utilizing regular short neck tenons with our 3-piece maple top and mahogany body. However, you gotta look closely. This is still a pancake body. Note the small layer of maple on top of the mahogany body before the maple top joins onto it. I'm still researching when that layer might have ended. So we're talking the one that starts right here. The visible one that everybody hates, it starts to phase out in 76. But here we are, a decade later and still have some remnants of that. But otherwise, we can just see more of the original non-aged color. And speaking of that, if you look over here with your pick guard off, it is just ever so slightly more dark gray there because it's been shielded. And in fact, when you remove your pickup, right around the surround, you can also see it hasn't aged as much. And another quirky thing about mid to late 80s Les Paul Customs is they install their pickguard bracket in a slightly different area. Usually we're used to seeing them down here. They came up closer to their binding. I first noticed that on that maple fretboard 1986. So that's another IDing feature of them. But this pickguard's in okay shape. It's definitely got some scratches from use, but appears to be original. But now, bridge and tailpiece time. Thankfully, not a tailored version, so it's our regular Nashville style with the inserts in the body. And this is still an era-correct bridge made by Schaller in Germany, as you can see by our marking down here. As is common, though, for a bridge from this era, it is collapsed, meaning it's sagging there in the middle. So for better playability, it should technically be replaced. A symptom of that when you're playing on a guitar is if it buzzes only on the middle strings, but not the outer ones. It's because your bridge has slightly lost its radius, and those strings will be lower than intended. And now our tailpiece. Two different things could be going on here. These might be replaced or they just got heavily worn through. However, the tailpiece itself actually is replaced. It does not have the correct casting mark on the back. So somebody's probably doing a string change at one point in time. Careless tech picked up the wrong one. But it's still full weight and has a similar appearance, but these definitely are looking more nickel than chrome, like everything else. But that's what's cool about pewter, is it's one of the few colors that I have yet to see one come stock with gold hardware. It's like Silverburst in that nature, where this is what it normally comes with, whereas everything else, in order to have chrome or nickel, it would have to be a custom order. But now we can move on to our controls. It's the regular speed knobs. You got 2 volumes, 2 tones. Which one has been replaced? I'll give you a second. If you answered this one, you're wrong. Actual cracking within that is actually very common in this era of these knobs. It's this guy right here. Notice how much bolder the print is on these numbers as compared to this one. Someone has swapped that out at one point in time. And you might be saying, hey, Trogly, why aren't they all yellowed and ambered over with age? Around 1985, they switched the manufacturer of the knobs, and they just don't age anymore. But not only is there a knob replaced, it would take a keen eye to notice this, but something was not looking right around here. It's because our toggle switch is replaced. The switch tip anyways, the toggle itself appears to be fine, but this is black. It would have originally came with a cream one. But you can tell the styling is just ever so slightly different from the Gibson variant. It's a little bit more bulbous, but hey, it looks pretty good with the rest of our plastics. Let's take a second to detail the condition of this one. We've got a couple of dings. It looks like someone was messing with our poker chip at one point in time and scratched it up with a tool. And we've got some light scratches in our picking area right here. A couple of small impressions, but right down here we've got some sort of a scratch and another ding. For one of these, this is actually a survivor. In my experience, watching the market almost daily looking for these things to show up, there's really only been a handful, and usually it's just the same one that's getting passed around multiple times to different dealers. But we do have another impression right there, and of course some wear to our pickup covers in our usual areas. That's definitely the worst area. But moving on from our mahogany body and maple top, we've got our mahogany neck, 3 pieces yet with ebony fretboard. This was not a case queen. It was actually quite extensively played from here all the way till about the 12th fret. Don't see too much wear in the true soloing area, but this was somebody's main player for quite some time. Could you level recrown these frets? Yeah, they've got enough life left to them, but it's still the low, wide frets of the era. They're starting to get a little bit taller, though. You can also see some light divoting within the fretboard. I'm not sure if that was somebody's fingernails or just a defect from the factory. This one looks like fingernails to me, although that one might just be factory shenanigans. But we've got some more nail wear right here. Far from the worst I've seen. I measure a 1.71 inch nut width, increasing to 2.06 at the 12, 0.84 first fret neck depth, and despite saying 0.96, these are relatively skinny necks. I would classify it more so on the medium side of things. Like, it is starting to get a little bit more rounded, but on the slimmer to medium territories. Here's that neck profile at the first fret and the 12th fret. You can certainly see it's a little bit more rounded than an earlier 80s. Now here's a cool playing profile shot of it, all the ambered over binding with the cool finish. And now our headstock. We've still got the more blocky looking Gibson logo with our regular custom emblem and our truss rod. It's in good shape. Has tons of life left. But now the cover itself, it looks like your standard one. It's just aged a bit. However, on the back, I vaguely remember a guitar that had identifying information on it, like, hey, this was my guitar type thing. I can't remember if that was this guitar or not, but that definitely seemed like what that would be. Somebody glued their information on the back of the truss rod cover in case it was ever stolen or something. But it's got something going on back there. It could have also just been somebody put a layer of glue because it was starting to crack. I'm not sure. As far as our condition, just a small chip right there above our mother of pearl, and a couple light dings and impressions up there, and our usual outlines around the Gibson logo. Many a times you'll see like regular finish checking over the face of these headstocks. But now I've got it all strung back up. A few things I wanted to note. As I was expecting, the collapsed bridge does cause some mild fret buzz, especially towards the center registers. I have this set up as low as you'll probably want to go. There are some areas where the sustain of the note is deadened a bit. However, it should be playable, but this does play better with just slightly higher action as of right now. So just a note for the future. As of right now, I still plan on keeping this one in my collection because finding a cleaner one, good luck. Minor fretwork is easy enough to do if you want to. This is good enough for my purposes, and the occasional visitor to the museum collection to play it. But I also wanted to make mention that there is a little bit of bubbling lacquer right here by this tuner. One day that might chip. But now the back is where things get fun. So earlier we were looking at maple on the top. On the back we're looking at the mahogany. A lot of guys still dog on Gibson yet today for, hey, I can see the wood grain through your metallic solid color paint jobs. Here's proof that Gibson has been doing that for a long time. I think it has a cool dog hair-like finish to it. However, if you're coming from a different brand that doesn't do that, you might be like, hey, what's that all about? It's just something to expect. Whether it's good or bad, I'll leave that up to you. But here you can see where we've got some buckle worming within our clear coat and lots of nicks and dings and other various impressions. As far as the edge, we've got our thick binding in the cutaway, typical line around our neck, as well as a couple of small dings, but relatively well kept over here. And as far as our other side, I would say just a small ding right there. Right by our binding, no arm wear. I'd say the worst thing is the buckle worming, and right over here, there is a large impression into the clear coat that'll catch your eye. That and this line ding over here. But here's another area where you can see the original finish, as well as another difference. I believe it's somewhere around 1983 when they start to use their CNC machines. When you have a square channel like that, that's how you know that they use the CNC to do that instead of a drill run from your output jack. And usually in this era, when you see that, that's how you know for sure that your guitar has weight relief, because they're also weight relieving it by taking more wood out for your channel, because they only need a small circular route, but they choose to make it larger. In fact, hey, that's more than enough room to take our endoscope and take a spelunking trip. It's just so beautifully and evenly routed. I always thought that was the maple showing right there, but no, that's the extreme glue that they put on the bottom side of the maple to join onto your mahogany, because that's not completely even. But as we continue up here, we can see the back side of our pickups. Hey, this is a fun way. If you're one of those guys that don't want to take your guitar apart, you could technically just remove the back plate and verify that way. It's a little hard to see, but we can see that maple layer again. So that's what we're actually seeing here. That has the glue and all that. And as we continue our tour here, we can see how they route away a little bit there for our neck pickup before we get to our beautiful toggle switch. And that will conclude our tour of the inside of this 1986 Gibson Les Paul Custom. Just kidding, I actually did find something else over here. I don't think it's really pertinent, but we have some sort of a sign-off code underneath our base plate. It's mildly risky to take the pots out of a guitar, because sometimes they can break when you take the knobs off, and it's just kind of a pain, so I don't want to do that today. I don't have much hope of that painting the rest of the story as to why these were so late, but fun to talk about anyway. I'm curious about the output jack, though. Are they still using the tin can style? Sure enough, they are. Switchcraft. But it's also around this time when they start to discontinue our shielding tin over top of it, and they just give you back a regular ground wire. And as far as our solder work, that looks factory stock original to me. This looks like that pickup could have been in and out, so that's our neck position. However, it could have also just been a bad solder day, because Randy Leonard, he actually told me a story once where it wasn't always the most skilled people doing the solder work, because sometimes it went to sound check, something wasn't right, so they'd just go in and fix it. Now that's paraphrasing, but that was a story he told me once. But what's really unique about this, look at your pot codes, 1378730 something. So these are 1987 pot codes to the 31st week, and they match perfectly. So I don't know what the story is of this guitar, because the serial number dates it to 1986, about halfway through the year or so. So it must have hung out for almost a year before it got the electronics. There's gotta be a story there. And here's a look at our toggle switch just for fun. And as far as the back plates, they're just ebony. This one's pretty badly scratched up. Is it easy enough to replace it? Sure, but it's the original one, so why bother? But outside of our body, we've got our neck. And even though this doesn't have any finish wear, you do have dings. There's one right there. Quite a sizable one in your clear coat right here. It looks much worse than it actually is. But if somebody wanted to redo the clear coat, I'm pretty sure that would just completely disappear. But there is some mild finish checking over here. But for this finish, that is prone to lots of finish checking, it's very minor. And I know what you're thinking, is that a crack? Nah, it's a scratch. And we'll blacklight that here in a second. But the rest of our headstock, you can see there's some sort of an impression up there. And you can see where the wings were joined onto the back side of the headstock with the seam lines. But now the blacklight test. It's ultra green now. Everything looks good on the front. We even have a little bit of glowing to our pickup ring. It's not uncommon to find that only on one and not the other. Headstock is extra glowing, but you can see that chipped area in case you missed it earlier, as well as the slight bubbled. And our backside, also looking good. A little bit of sweat absorption there. Take a look around the neck. No issues there. It's all looking fine on that side too. We definitely have some sweat absorption in the neck, but that's to be expected. But no breaks, cracks, or repairs. I'd say we're good here. But all said and done, this one is a chunky one. It feels like it weighs 11 or 12, but it's only 10 pounds, 1.2 ounces. Let's go ahead, plug it in, and hear how it sounds. Wow, that bridge pickup is pretty hot. Whereas that neck pickup's pretty mellow. But then when you use them both together, I would say it slightly favors the bridge pickup. I really like that bridge pickup on this one. The neck's okay too. And hey, just for some fun, since I was using a different amp the first time I did a mini demo of this one, let's hear those tones. overall, as far as the playability, despite the fret wear and the super low action, it's pretty comfortable as long as you're doing chords. '80s customs aren't known for their tall frets, so big bends do at your own risk. So now you know all about the custom color Pewter. What are your final thoughts on this? For me, I think it's definitely one of my favorite non-traditional, non-mainstream colors within Gibson's catalog. You don't see these very often unless you're like really hunting reverb, and then you get lucky and see one day, and then never forget this weird olive green aging charcoal finish. As far as the way this one plays, obviously, it could be set up better. We could have a better bridge, as we were talking about, but I thought it played quite fantastically as is, and the tones out of this thing, there's a reason why most of them get the finish worn off the neck. There's something to these. I don't know if it's just the songs and playing that this color inspires, or is there something more to it, but that bridge pickup is a real showstopper on this one. Well, thank you for tuning in today. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new, and we'll catch you guys tomorrow on the next one. Take care.